Hey, welcome back to Word on Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for joining us again. I am very excited to have a couple of special guests with me tonight. You ladies want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Hannah Steele.
Hi, I'm Teresa Dominguez.
All right, that's the last time you have to look at the camera, I promise, all right? So we are going to have a conversation today about Matthew chapter 3, verses 13 through 17. Okay? So I'm going to read this and then we'll dive right in. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Then Jesus went from Galilee to the Jordan River to be baptized by John. But John tried to talk him out of it. I am the one who needs to be baptized by you, he said. So why are you coming to me? But Jesus said it should be done, for we must carry out all that God requires. So John agreed to baptize him. After his baptism, as Jesus came up out of the water, the heavens were opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and setting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my dearly loved Son, who brings me great joy." So the first question I want to ask you guys is about your own baptisms. What was your baptism in water like? Where did it happen? How did it come about?
Well, mine was actually in 2012, so it's been quite some time.
Okay.
And I was desperate. I was desperate for a new beginning, and I was ready to just hit a reset button, and being baptized was my start to just my new life.
Awesome.
So I wanted to make a declaration in front of everybody to say, this is where I'm starting, and we'll go.
That's great.
That's just kind of
Where'd you get baptized at?
at a church called Sacred City.
Oh, okay.
I was water baptized.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Okay, that's great. How about you, Hannah?
Mine was in 2021, and it was here.
I remember that.
Yes, that was a huge. For me, it was more. It was something I really wanted to do, and Keegan had been wanting to do it also. So for me, that was something that I wanted to do together with him.
Yeah.
He had wanted it for a few years too, but I wanted to make sure he was ready. Like, I knew I was ready, but I was ready to hold off until I knew, like, this is what it means. Because I know as like a kid, that's easy to say, yeah, I want to do that, but I want him to be in the spot as where I was also. It was really important to me because it was something that, like, my grandparents had always put over us too, as far as like just the church and everything. And then when I started coming on my own more and more and more, it was just something that was me saying, like, this is how I want to live.
Yeah.
And now that's how I want to have my family living.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I got baptized way before you did. I got baptized in 2001. It was just a few months after I got saved. It was like 9 months after I got saved. And it was on Good Friday.
Oh.
Because I'm just weird, and I was
That's
like,
awesome.
oh, hey, I should get baptized the day Jesus got crucified,
I
right?
like that. Mm-hmm.
And so, because some of the symbolism there,
Yes,
because
for sure.
when a person gets baptized in water, it symbolizes them dying with Christ. When you come up out of the water, it symbolizes you coming to life with Jesus. And so I had a great youth pastor who took me and a couple of my friends in the church van. We went down to the river, and it was freezing cold because it was still like early April in Missouri. So the water was like 52 degrees. It was probably 40 degrees outside. And he baptized me, and it was amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I always like those kind where it's like outside.
Yeah, it's a good memory.
Yeah, for sure.
Now I will say I love the water baptismal that we have here.
Yes.
Just number one, it's really practical and it's easy to use. I've been in baptisms that were not easy to use.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we love to do here too is see families do that together. I love it when the dads baptize their kids, or spouses might baptize each other. It's just it is, like you said, it's very significant because it is a declaration.
Yes.
It's us saying, hey, this is who I am now, and this is the way I'm going to live my life.
Yes.
So Jesus got baptized by his cousin John, who we know as John the Baptist. Well, that wasn't his last name, but that's how they referred to him, because he baptized a lot of people. But when Jesus came to John, John was like, you know what? I can't do this. Like, who am I to baptize you, Jesus? And Jesus said, and he says, I'm the one who needs to be baptized by you. Why are you coming to me? Now, this is something that kind of throws some people off. They're like, well, why did Jesus get baptized? Because we know that Jesus lived a perfect life. So he didn't need to be baptized to have his sins removed. Well, in the Jewish world, baptism then, and still does, has a little bit of a different significance than it does for us as Christians. We use baptism as a symbol of our death and resurrection with Christ. They use it as a symbol of moving from one thing into something new. So very, very similar in nature. Jesus was just into his early 30s, just had turned 30 years old. And he was leaving his life behind as a normal man. Right. Like up to this point, he'd just been living normally. He worked for his dad. He'd become a carpenter. He lived at home with his mother and his siblings, helped take care of things. And now he's starting his life as a rabbi. And so he felt that God the Father had prompted him to go and to be baptized. But this totally freaked John out. And so to me, this says something really important. Does it matter who the person is that baptizes you? Or does it matter that you're getting baptized?
My personal feeling is it matters if you're getting baptized.
Yeah,
because that has to do with your own salvation
right.
and not necessarily the other person.
Yeah. And that's absolutely right. Yeah. You don't have to be a priest. You don't have to be a member of the clergy. You don't have to be a pastor to baptize somebody. The thing that matters is the person that is making that personal decision. Absolutely. I do have another cool story about baptism. So I used to do ministry in Hollywood, California. Yeah. And every Thursday night we would go down and do ministry by Santa Monica Pier. And this whole summer we were ministering to these kids that called themselves street rats or gutter punks. And they were homeless by choice. These were kids from like middle class families that ran away and wanted to go live on the streets of LA because they thought it was cool. Oh, wow. So we had ministered to this kid all summer long, and it was our last week of our summer internship. We were getting ready to go home. And he gave his life to Jesus. Wow. which was such a cool moment.
That is very cool.
And so we were like, oh, what do we do? And so we decided that we wanted to see him baptized and we wanted to take communion. And so we went down to the ocean and we took care of things, and then we did communion with a hamburger bun and Diet Coke.
That's fantastic.
Like, that was our communion, right? But it was one of the most significant moments I've ever had, because we're sitting there on the beach, ocean waves coming in with this new believer, and it was just this awesome moment because it was just we were just these kids with no training, no experience, that just loved Jesus, and this guy was so excited. And that night he actually left the streets and he went into a ministry and like a rehabilitation program. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So it was a very cool thing. Yeah. So what I see here in this is a normal man. Now he's John the Baptist, right? So he's not exactly normal. Yeah. But it's one man who is baptizing another man who just happened to be Jesus. Yeah. But there was a certain amount of humility in John. Like, John had to humble himself to be willing to serve Jesus in this way. Why is it that sometimes we try to talk ourselves out of doing things for the Lord?
I feel like it depends on the situation you're in. A lot of the time, it depends on the people around you. So if you feel comfortable enough in your own, I feel like it shouldn't matter where you're at or who you're with. But I feel like a lot of the time that's the case, right? So if you see an opportunity to be like, I can do something for the Lord, but then you're like, oh, these people might like think, what the heck is she doing? You know what I mean?
Right.
So then you're just like, you reel back in and you're like, nope, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, for me, I struggled with that, even though I've always been a believer, because I've always grown up around it. But, like, when I really started learning about stuff, it was, like, trying to do that in front of people that I didn't normally do it in front of. So I was like, I think that's where the biggest issue is
Sure.
people are worried about what other people think.
Yeah.
My hang up has always been just not doing it good enough. Maybe if what I say or what I feel or I do, you know, may not come out or look the way I thought it should, or I don't, you know, do it right.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes I stop with that, but ultimately it's more of that push internally saying that right or wrong.
Yeah.
Should I or should I, and how does that align here?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and I think for some people too, it's that feeling of not being good enough.
yeah.
You know, like John, he's like, who am I? Who am I that I would do this for you, Jesus?
Yeah.
Right?
You should be better.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we get in our heads about that a lot.
100%.
Do you think Jesus cares as much as we do about that?
No.
Yeah, what's he looking for?
Right.
As long as we, our heart, like
Yeah.
where our heart's at in it.
We're going with it, and what we're doing as far as it's like not just living for him, but being true to ourselves. And, you know, whether it's learning new ways of doing it, or, you know, you don't have to be able to pray as good as the next person.
Yep.
Or, you know what I mean? You might not know everything, but it's always a learning experience. And as long as you're willing to learn, then that's all that matters.
That's absolutely right.
Yep.
You know, I remember, it was like a year or so ago, where after you took on your leadership role here in the church as our nursery coordinator, you just, one day we were doing something, you just started praying. Yeah. And I was like, whoa! Like, I mean, not, because number one, your prayer was great, but number two, in our relationship, since I'd known you, that was the first time I'd ever seen you just step in and just go.
Yeah.
And it's so fun for me to see people step into those roles, you know, after growing and learning and then getting over that fear. Because that's the only way you're going to do it.
Gaining confidence in it.
I had to do that. And actually being a part of the women's retreat, like a leader for that is honestly the biggest reason I've grown so much, because they've all pushed me to like be more. And even though I want to, but I'd be like, nope, I'm not going to do it. I would never pray out loud. Never. And now it's like they've all pushed me to know what I want to do, but I was always too scared. So building that confidence and just doing it and not caring.
Do you think Jesus sometimes pushes us beyond our comfort level?
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it does get uncomfortable, and you go into your own head and you try to decide if it's God or if it's not, or if so that dancing back and forth in your mind.
Yeah.
But I've kind of taken on this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing, not thinking about it so much and just doing it.
Yeah.
The obedience piece.
I have found 99% of the time in my life, if it's a good thing, it's a God thing.
Oh, for sure.
You know, I try to get spiritual about it and talk myself out of it.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, surely, Lord, it's not you. And Jesus is just like, just do it.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. And I think that's where, with me, I've realized that. Because I was always in my head, I'm like, I can't do that, because I'm not helping anybody by just like pulling the brakes and being like, nope, I can't do it.
Right.
Because I can do it. I just need to know that God has me and all the way through.
That's right.
I've been convicted by that in some things here just in the church, because I know that I've been called to do something so much more, but that uncomfortable feeling, the not feeling good enough or smart enough or not being as well spoken as maybe some other people's, or knowing all the scripture, or just, you know, being very thorough in the word, I have backed up. But there has also been that push, like, this is not about you. This is about other people. So you have a story and you don't know who you could potentially touch. So that's kind of where I'm going. And if I'm being completely transparent, today was a thing for me because knowing that other people would be viewing this. So,
Sure.
but it's something that I had no anxiety about. And so for me, it was a positive. It was a win because I'm going into this because I know it's not about me.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm proud of you for doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big deal.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
It very much is.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing about God, though, is we often think, okay, when I step out and do the thing, it's over.
No.
But God's reward is, okay, here's another thing.
It
Yeah.
is.
Here's another thing, and bigger things and
Yeah.
better things. And the only way to get over being uncomfortable is to be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. You just got to do it uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah, like mine is definitely public speaking. It's not my thing, and I'm like, no, probably won't ever get there. But like a full on, I can do like little snippets. I've gotten better before. Heck no, but I feel like, especially like in the last year and a half, 2 years, I feel like I've gotten more confident
Sure.
in that aspect. But again, it was them pushing me to, it started out with like just praying like over the women's retreat, and then it was getting pushed and being like, oh, you can sing, so here's this. And then I've kind of like the willingness to even make the announcement and stuff, never before, nope. But I feel like it's gotten easier.
yeah,
The more I just listen to him and just say, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
that's great.
Not just the background.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good encouragement for other people to hear too, because we
Yeah.
all feel that way.
Yeah.
We all feel that way. So then Jesus says we must carry out all that God requires. Jesus' number one focus was on obedience, being obedient to what the Father was telling him, showing him to do. Why is obedience to God so important?
For me, I feel like it's to show him that not only are you worthy of him, but yourself. Because if you're not obedient, how can you not show the people around you like how he's speaking through you? And for me, my biggest thing is like my family.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not obedient, then how am I going to teach them to be obedient in things that they do?
Yeah. So it's a big part is our example. Yeah, that's good.
Being a role model, actually putting into place what I say. So having kids has honestly helped me be cognitive of some of behaviors or verbiage or things that used to be okay prior to kids. It's like I have two kids watching me, so I don't want to be hypocritical.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect, nor will I ever be. But even in those moments where I fall short, I'm able to bring it back to them and tell them, hey, I'm not perfect, but this is what it is. We should be doing this, and we should do it this way.
Yeah.
And so it's that daily bread, taking up the cross every single day, going into it knowing that I'm not perfect, yet obedience is just something that we must live by. So
Yeah. Jesus says, if you love me, you're going to keep my commands.
yes.
Yeah.
So what happens to our relationship with God when we are disobedient?
I feel like for me, it's the lack of happiness, honestly. Because I have been at a point in my life where I wasn't obedient, and the more I am obedient over the years, like I've noticed a huge difference just in myself and like knowing, okay, working on myself comes before, my kids.
Yeah.
Even though they're a huge part of my life, yes, but if I'm not good, they're not good.
Right.
Or even same with my marriage. Like I can't fix something if I'm not working on myself.
That's really good.
That is really good. I like that.
How about for you? What happens in our relationship with God when we aren't obedient to him?
I personally, I just feel like because I've taken such a declaration to claim who I am and who I want to be, I often beat up on myself. I can't. It's hard for me to sometimes dig myself out of that. Poor is me, and I shouldn't, I couldn't, but so it just gives me more encouragement to make better choices moving forward.
Yeah.
But I think for me also too is being able to open up and just be very transparent with people and say, this is what I'm struggling with, help me. And so it's that whole piece of using my team.
That's huge.
I think that helps too, me stay on course, is when you have a team of people around you that actually care.
Yes.
They're actually praying for you. They're actually checking in on you, and they love on one another. And so for me, that's been huge here at Word of Life.
Yeah.
So that's been my greatest part. I mean, my kids, obviously, with the kids and learning stuff, but it's just been a great experience here. So it makes me just want to learn more.
Yeah. So. And I think you've done a great job since you've been here of really explaining to people the importance of fellowship and relationship in our growing with Jesus, because we really can't do it alone.
No,
not at all. And so I love what you said, not being obedient, it just steals the joy out of life. And then what you're saying is it really opens a door for Satan to come in and just beat us up. And he often uses our own voice, right? To just beat us up and make us feel ashamed and guilty. And the Bible says that when we are disobedient, it actually creates a separation between us and God. We begin to hide from him. We don't go looking for him in the everyday because we have these feelings, and it makes us just not want to be around him, because nobody likes to be around somebody when they feel guilty. It's like we've all got kids. When our children do something wrong, it's so easy to know they've done something wrong because they got that look. They're avoiding us. They won't make eye contact because they know that they're wrong, and they don't want to own up to it. They don't want to be around. And that's exactly what we do. No matter how old we get, we still treat God the same way.
It's like it removes all the things that bring you joy, because like you said, it's like hiding. So, the church brings me joy. The people in the church bring me joy, but you start to wonder, and it's like you don't want to be there. You withdraw, but yet that's where your heart's at. So yes, it's the lack of joy that comes with that.
Well, and that's what, for me, I know when I miss service, if I have to miss a couple weekends in a row, I can feel it.
Heavy.
It's very heavy. And even if I am talking to people, it's still not the same. So you have that this Satan sneaking in just to be put that void and bring you down. Come down to my level, but as soon as I, just come back in, and it'll be I'm on vacation or something, you know what I mean? But I'm eager to get back, because I'm it
fills you up.
It does. It fills me up, and that it helps me throughout the week.
Well, just this morning I was at the gym, and I find the older I get, the more bold I'm getting and just being honest with people. And there was this guy, and I've known this guy for years, and we talk a lot about life, and we'll talk about politics and culture and philosophy, and we'll talk a little bit about God. And I know this guy's a believer, but for years, he actually used to go to this church before I was ever here. And for years, he's just told me, well, I don't go to church because of this, this, and this. And so today, I was like, hey, you coming to Easter? And he's like, nope. And he just said it so emphatically. I was like, okay, why not? And he just started going off on this list of things, and I just started to push back on him, because I was like, listen, you can have a relationship with God on your own, but Jesus calls us to be part of his body. Both of those aspects are important. You have to be in relationship one-on-one, but you also have to be in relationship with the body, with the other Christians, because we cannot do this by ourselves.
I had that same situation happen. So my grandparents always would be like, oh, you want to come to church with us? And because I had a million things going on. You know what I mean? And I was like, no. They always asked me. And it was when my great uncle was in the hospital. He asked me, he said, do you take the kids to church? And he knew the answer. And I was like, no. But I did. He goes, you really should get them in the church. Even though I've always grown up, I believed 100%, but he wanted us in the church.
Yeah.
And I did. I made a promise to him. I was like, I promise you I will. And I did. And we never left.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it might just take that one thing, like you being consistent of doing that and something to click, and he'll come through the doors.
That's right. That's what we hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jesus gets baptized, comes up out of the water, and it says the heavens opened. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know if the clouds parted or whatever, but to me it's kind of cool that the heavens opened. Like that must have been something recognizable, right? And it says that the Spirit of God descended like a dove and rested upon him. And then the Father spoke from heaven and said, "This is my dearly loved Son who brings me great joy." First of all, hearing God speak from heaven would have been a cool moment.
Very.
Everybody probably had to change their clothes afterwards. That I can't imagine that it was not a little bit terrifying.
Yeah.
But here we see Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and the Father's voice, all in the same location.
Yeah.
So this is, to us, the baptism of Jesus is great scriptural precedent for the doctrine of the Trinity. That God exists. God is one, but he exists in the form of three persons: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So when somebody talks to you about the Trinity, what comes to mind? Because this is not, theologians have been debating this topic for 2,000 years, right? This is not something we have just figured out all the way. So what's it bring up for you?
Well, for me personally, I actually had a conversation this morning with somebody about this who only believes that there is only God, there's no Trinity. And my personal understanding of it, and my verbiage, and my way of explaining it to myself to understand is like mind, body, spirit. And it's also, when I think about the Trinity, I think about, God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. For me, it's like he made himself 3 in 1 for me because he loves me so much, because he can be my dad when I need somebody to run to, but he can also be somebody here in front of me that I can talk to, but yet when there's nobody else around, he can be in that spirit in my realm. And so for me, he's made himself available to for my needs per se, even though that's not because God doesn't need me.
Right.
I need God.
But
So
you're able
when I
to relate
say
to
that,
him
I'm
that way.
able to, that's the way I'm able to describe it.
Sure.
And so that's kind of my takeaway of it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so I was able to say this, and I don't know if she got it, but, I try to make her understand in the way I perceive it.
Sure.
So
That's great.
that's me.
I would agree with you, because it's like everywhere you go, like, he's there. No matter what, no matter the lows of the lows, the highs of the highs, like no matter what you need, it's always there.
And there are different views on the Trinity. What you're talking about is called oneness, or Jesus only. There's also a view called modalism. It's somebody like Pastor Tony, Tony Evans. I think he's a modalist. And that's the belief that God presents himself in one form at different times. And so first it was God the Father, then it was Jesus the Son, and now it's God the Holy Spirit. Again, I think this passage refutes that concept and that idea, that here we see all three aspects or persons of God in one place. Now, can we wrap our brains around how one being can have three different persons? No, we can't, but God's above us, right? Like God's a little bit above us.
Yeah, exactly. He's beyond. Like he's beyond.
Yeah.
So we can't even think the things that he
does.
he knows or he does, or that he's. So I mean, his thinking is not ours.
Right.
No.
So
now there is an illustration from just physical nature that I think is very helpful for me, and it's H2O. So water, H2O in its chemical form, right?
Yeah.
It H2O exists in 3 different forms
Yes.
simultaneously. You have solid liquid, or you have solid water, ice, then you have the liquid form, and then you have water vapor, which is all around us in the air. And to me, that is just a very good illustration of how something can be in 3 different forms, but be one essence or one substance.
Yeah.
And so the thing that speaks to me most about the Trinity, though, is that God eternally has always existed within relationship, within himself. Because like you said, God doesn't need us, but he chooses us.
Yes.
And he chooses to relate to us in that way. And he gives us this perfect example of what it means to serve and to love and to submit to one another. Because the Son submits to the Father. The Spirit submits to the Son, right? It's this one being, but there's this love relationship within the Trinity that they care for and serve and bless one another.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about how we should treat each other?
To meet people where they are.
Yeah.
It's really hard to love the unlovable, but yet we're supposed to.
Yeah.
And trying to, that whole understanding piece of other people and where they are. And I think my walk with God has really opened my eyes to that, is constantly reminding myself to extend grace, because I say it to my kids, and it's honestly helped me personally that we never know where somebody came from.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't know why they could be so hard or not, or, one extreme to the next. So grace has been something that I've definitely dived into, which has helped me in my walk, to understand people and how to understand people, instead of closing myself off completely, not knowing why or where they've been.
Yeah. That's great.
I do like that. I am kind of the same way as far as that goes, because to me, you don't know where they came from, and you don't know what kind of day they're having. So just because they're having a bad day, when you have an interaction with them, doesn't mean that it's going to be the same interaction you have a few days later.
Sure.
Because you don't know where their headspace is, and especially if you don't know them, they're not going to just be like, here you go.
Right.
Let me tell you everything that's happening. And I can relate to that, because I can be that way too, especially when we're stressed out, it's, we can be in a totally different headspace than if we're just like having a casual conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's I guess for me, owning that at the end of the day, because even if I have a bad interaction with somebody, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, that person's like rude. I mean, I might think, oh, like what's going on? But like, I'm not going to just like judge them off of that one interaction, because I don't want people to judge me for one interaction that they have with me.
So it gives us some really important perspective.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and 2, also it's like when people see me, I want them to see God.
Yeah.
So it's that piece. Like, no, I'm not perfect, but I am human, and how can we help each other?
Right.
Kind of thing. So
I use that a lot with my kids, and I'm always constantly telling them, you're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I don't expect you to be perfect. Just do better. You know what I mean? Because that's all they can do. You can only do better, because the only perfect person is God. And none of us are going to be able to be like him. You know what I mean? We can want to be like him, but at the end of the day, we're gonna have our falls. We're gonna have our successes, and you just have to keep pushing.
Yep. Yeah, and for me, the Trinity is just that ongoing, continual, never-ending examples of fellowship and unconditional love that we're supposed to have with each other. Well, guys, thank you. This was a really great conversation. You guys both had really wonderful things to share, so thank you for your time. For those of you who are joining us, thank you. And we ask you that if this has spoken to you, please share it on Facebook, on YouTube, so that other people can join in again. We hope that you'll join us next week for another Word on Wednesday. God bless you.
bye.
Bye.